Welcome to the Coaching Collective podcast. I'm not sure what episode we're up to.
Far out.
No idea.
Almost 50.
Oh, yeah. Today we welcome back Yeufre Perez. So Yeufre Perez's episode would have launched today officially on the 18th of March as we record this. And we thought, as the first one went so well, we'd get him back for round number two. A little bit of a recap. So we sort of, as mentioned in the previous podcast, we connected through Instagram years ago when I was earlier on in my journey, and he invited me onto his podcast. And I probably should give that another listen back. I think I mentioned that last time as well. And then from there, sort of just seeing each other grow from just sort of following each other, supporting each other, watching each other. But today we're going to dive into a few things, a bit more coaching specific. So, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me again. The first convo was fun. We ended up talking shit, going on tangents, but honestly, if we can provide even one little nugget of advice or tips when it comes to fitness and nutrition, I'm happy because that's what I'm here for. I'm in the game to help people, not just to get likes or to be popular. It's all about giving that long-term content knowledge out to the people. Even though if it's just like 5 people, I don't give a shit. I just want to help people.
Yeah, it's funny because I feel like when people get into it and they start posting content, they sort of think that the following and the engagement is like that's what I need to do well. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you need a handful of good clients who apply your principles and trust you.
I feel like it's well with content. Like, say, for example, when it's like views on reels and it's like you have 1,000, 2,000 people watch the reel and people are like, oh, it's not good enough. But it's like you put 1,000, 2,000 people in a room that watch your reel. Like, that is so many people. Even like on a story, it's like you get like 150, 200 views on a story and you're like, shit. But then it's like you've provided content or like value to like 200 people. Like that's
I got a couple DMs within the last 3 months because I've been posting rarely because I've been so busy with my in-person clients and my online clientele, and I've been slacking on Instagram, which is where you guys really motivated me, and now I'm planning things out to execute a lot better. But in that time when I make 1 or 2 posts, whether it's nutrition, whether it's a training split, whether it's like a form advice, I get DMs with people that aren't paying me saying, man, you helped my shoulder, you cleared things up for me, you simplified things in terms of nutrition. And I think that's what Instagram and TikTok, whatever you use, that's what it should be used for. At the end of the day, yeah, you want to get revenue, you want to get income, but I think if you provide knowledge out there, the clients are going to come. That should be secondary. The main thing you should focus on is just helping people.
Yeah.
I remember years ago when I first started as well. Would have been 2018. I remember I had a quiet period of business like in the start, and then I really got into the content stuff during that. Like it would have only been a month, but I remember I thought to myself, if I'm providing value and I'm providing like content of an educational perspective, inevitably I will get clients.
Yeah.
One thing I did say to someone the other day, I know we actually set off the line, obviously, that we didn't want to make this businessy, but just one thing I will say, it's sort of on the edge of it.
Right.
I had a girl that I coached the other day. She had a business mentor. I told her to get rid of the business mentor because she was shit. Yeah, business mentor was terrible. And I said to her, like, you're at a level in your career where like you need to separate from like the other trainers. Yeah. You need to show the way to do that is actually to educate yourself and then to show that. Do you get what I'm trying to say? Like provide educational content. I said to her, if you're posting like a recipe guide or a calorie comparison or a day in your life, this is what the mentor is telling her to do. You do not have the foundation for people to care about that. Like people aren't going to be drawn to you for that. Because what I was going to say was when we first connected, my content was entirely educational. It was entirely like study breakdown, why Alpha GPC is effective and what are the pros and cons of it. It's in front of me. That's what. Do you know what I'm trying to say? No one does that anymore.
No, but that's the time-consuming part, because if you look at depending on what social media algorithm people are following, you're gonna get the half-naked person, you're gonna get the person with abs. The content that kind of gets shoved down to the bottom is the actual concrete information, which again, you can't care and stress about, because if you're in the game to help people and you're looking for that long-term clientele, you have to provide not only the knowledge base, but you have to show people you care. But like, hey, there's a lot of shitty information out there. here's what I think, and here are the study to back it up. So that way you're actually getting advice that from someone that just gives a shit. As simple as that.
Yeah.
Which I think it's tough because I don't know. Do you guys use TikTok at all?
Yeah.
I don't. But yeah.
Okay.
The business
But
does. Yeah.
yeah, it's huge. But now in America, people are, I mean, the government, they passing legislation trying to ban it, trying to
Yeah.
ban it, whatever that means. And a lot of these fitness trainers, they're panicking because their content translates perfectly to TikTok. It's like 20-second clips, 30-second clip. Here's the best way to get shredded abs, 3 exercises, whatever.
Yeah.
But in order to translate that into like a newsletter where you guys do or a YouTube video, it's a lot harder. It's a lot more work. So it all depends on which way people's algorithm is taking them. And for
Mhm.
me, and what I'm seeing mostly, it's hard for them to get legit information, especially with like an Instagram or TikTok algorithm.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing as well. And I feel like it's very hard for people to get across. Like when you have those TikToks and you have those Instagram reels and stuff like that, like a lot of people will post like my like push workout. And it's like quite often or not, I feel like with a lot of people, it's very much you have to catch them to get their attention for the video, say for example, and you can't give them too much. Like if I broke down my push session on a reel or a TikTok and explained why I'm doing this exercise first, I'd lose the person in the first 10 seconds. They're gone. Whereas if I posted, I do a pec deck fly, then a press, then a this, then a that, and just that's all I say. It's like pec deck fly, incline chest press, whatever it may be. You catch people in because they're just like, oh, I don't really have to think. I just got to look at it. Whereas if I said I do a pec deck fly to open up through the chest and do blah 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 blah, it's like people just be like, oh, next. Like I don't want to listen to that.
Depends because you got the guy like me when I started bodybuilding. I was looking at those videos on YouTube and seeing everyone that broke down those exercises. I was
Yeah,
following
I
John
wouldn't say
Meadows.
why,
That was me as well.
but I also
I was just following these people, but I would stick through the whole videos because I knew that was something that I wanted to take seriously.
exactly that's why.
Yeah, and if you guys, especially us, we're looking for long-term clientele, we're looking for that 1, 2, 3 people a month that actually sticks through the video. It's nice to get the views, it's cute, you get a couple likes, but business-wise, we got to really keep focusing, not fall victim to the algorithm and really keep focusing on putting out good content.
Yeah.
It's actually interesting. I won't mention who specifically, but I was just thinking today of like how fast some coaches come in like periods of time, but it happens so slowly that you don't realize until you reflect.
You notice.
Oh, you know,
Yeah.
I'll just say it. Like I was looking something to do with Pro Coach.
Pro, which one is that?
Pro Coach is their UK team, but they're coached Phoebe Hagen now.
Got it. I got it. Yeah.
Huge. Like that's probably the biggest client ever. But I remember like 2 years ago, I was coached under them, and like I was like one of their bigger clients. Do you know what I mean? And like I'm just a nobody,
Right.
Like now it's like that's 2 years, man. That's crazy.
That's the thing with social media. Once you get it's word of mouth. So
Yeah.
once one person gets results,
Mm.
their friends see it, their friends see it.
Mm.
And that's the thing with especially with us keeping up with the knowledge, which is tough, is that we have to make time for it, but we also got to realize what is needed in the market. What
Mm.
are people what's one thing that is not about just standing out and doing something crazy, but just providing content that differentiates but also simplifies for most people, which I think can resonate. And at the end of the day, if you're getting results, then your
Mm.
business speaks for itself. We don't have to fall victim to the algorithm.
Results are the best advertising.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, so what we're gonna dive into first the training philosophies and how they've changed over the years for us. I did like this one because I was super weird with it too. But yeah, did you want to start?
What's changed?
I remember
Wait 1 second, because you're the younger brother, right? Who got into fitness first?
me.
Michael.
Okay, so when so when you saw your older brother getting into it, were you just copy and pasting what he was doing, or you wanted to do your own thing, physique wise, or what, exercise wise, wherever?
Well, I don't know. It's hard to say because me and Michael, when it started, me and Michael never really trained together. I reckon Michael
Never.
took me to the gym like twice. I reckon me and Michael have trained together. Probably I could count on one hand how many times we've trained together.
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah.
Why?
I don't know.
I
Just
know,
never
yeah.
have.
Mm.
I think it's
Yeah.
just always, we always just trained at different times and we always had different schedules.
I don't love training with people either. The reason I sometimes train with clients is just to
See how they're going.
see that they actually train properly and how
Right.
they look. It's more like I train with clients. It's more for me to be able to see them without having to block off time in my calendar to see them. Does that make sense? Because like
Yeah,
I
100%.
train, so it's two birds, one stone. Yeah.
But
Okay, so when you were starting, you would at least see what he was doing and try to replicate it, or were you going on your own path?
nah, I sort of went on my own path. I reckon I learned, it's funny that you asked this because I was actually reflecting on this not long ago and I was trying to sit there and think, I'm like, where did I learn a lot of my training stuff and whatever? And you know where I learned a lot of it? I learned a lot of it from Phil Heath and Evan Centopani.
Yes, sir. Classics.
Because I used to watch a lot of their YouTube videos. So I used to just find like the muscle and fitness ones or the muscle and strength ones, like all that kind of stuff. And I remember I used to just watch that. And I very, very vaguely remember a lot of my programming was like 5 sets of bench press, 5 sets of barbell shoulder press. Like, you know what I mean? Just things like that. And it was just very, now I look back on that and it's like, there's nothing wrong with it. But at the same time, I'm just like, far out. Like, I reckon I'd die if I did 5 sets of bench press now. If I did it
Right.
with
If
like
you did, I mean, if you did it properly, warm-up sets versus
training
working sets.
intensity, the weight that I do, like all that kind of stuff now, I'd die 5 sets of bench press.
Yeah.
I used to go. I remember when I first started in. You remember? I think we spoke about this. You remember Eugene Teo?
Yes, sir.
We spoke
Yeah.
about it in the last podcast. He had a thing where, and he still does. He posts like super strange exercises.
Mm.
Yeah.
Where he has it on his app now. Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember I used to, when I first started programming and coaching, I used to do like super intricate exercises and all these new things. And I'd take them from him and then I put my own twist on it. And then I'd like claim it as my own. And like people would laugh at it, but at the same time, it would grab attention. So it would work. Volume was super high. Like I needed to address every muscle group, like every little fucking fiber. Like intensity was not really a thing. Not to say I didn't train intensely, but like definitely didn't push it to a limit that I would now. Like I remember one of my programs back in 2018 was like conventional deadlifts into pull-ups, like a superset.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah, this is the shit. Yeah.
I remember doing it was like a saddle shoulder press with the barbell pressed against the rack or something like
Oh yeah. That's
You
like a
remember
John
that?
Meadows. I've
Yeah.
seen that, yeah.
I remember doing something like that. Now I look back on that and I'm like, why the fuck was I doing
But
that?
if you hold the shoulder barbell against the rack like that and you push back, the way that it opens you up
I'm
is
talking,
ridiculous.
it was pushing against the
Yeah.
rack. So I was pushing into the rack, not back.
Yeah.
It was like an anterior shoulder activation, but it's
Yeah.
also some of the videos I've seen, it's I haven't done it because it's just inconvenient. But you have to make sure that you're slightly leaning back and you're doing like almost like you're doing a landmine press or something like
Yeah.
that.
And I remember
But it's
doing
super
I was back on that and I'm like, what? Just do a shoulder
No,
press.
but it's funny because like right now, especially if you look at how the coaches are, like we talked about last time, there's a bunch of coaches arguing about form, like there's lat pullovers for triceps, for lats, and all this other shit. But I think the main thing is that if you see the people that got results over the years, they kind of always did the same thing.
Yeah.
Like especially beginning, I did every program. I went to bodybuilding.com, did Arnold Schwarzenegger's 12-week program. I went on Evan Centopani's YouTube, did his program, the animal program. Then I jumped around to powerlifting. Then I bought like all of John Meadows' programs. To me, the most plagiarized coach is John Meadows. Everyone, like if you go back, I don't know if they're still on his website. I have some from 2013, 14.
Jesus.
Because I usually just try to buy a lot of coaches' programs just to get a gauge of like what people are doing, if anyone's doing anything innovative, anything new. But I see a lot of his training, a lot of his exercise, his especially how he orders things. Like something that's really classic that I didn't see other coaches do was just like before squatting, doing some short range leg extensions where you can where you get probably 1 or 2 working sets and hit some partials at the end.
Mhm.
Back then, I didn't see that much. It was either 3 sets of 15, 3 sets of 12, hit some squats, hit some leg press, walking lunges.
Yeah.
John Meadows was the first one to innovate the sets and reps, but also work the partials into it, which was which is why I gravitated towards that. But again, I did everything. I did whoever came on the radar, I did their program. But what I noticed with clientele, it was so hard to get a gauge of intensity. That's something where you need experience for. You can't just copy and paste a program or whatever. That's why I understand why you had to train people in person. Because my first virtual clientele, sometimes they wouldn't upload the videos, or sometimes they wouldn't text me the videos, and they'll be like, "Yeah, I'm on week 3, and these are my numbers." I was like, "That doesn't seem right." And then I would do like a FaceTime training session with them, and I'm like, "Oh my God, your intensity is like at a if 10 was the most intense, it's like at a 5."
Mm.
Because
God.
especially beginners, and in terms of getting progress, they can push it like one step beyond discomfort. When reality, sometimes in the working set, a top set, you need to go 5, 6, 8 steps beyond discomfort.
Yeah.
And that's where my training philosophy completely switched between learning how to scale intensity, but also knowing that people have to regulate the intensity themselves. I use the RPE scale. What do you guys use in terms of
Yeah.
Yeah, RP or RIR. Just
yeah, yeah, same shit, different acronyms, it always flips.
Yeah.
But once I started using that, that was another aspect I had to overcome, because some people, they will put RP 8, and then I'll see the video, I was like, hey, that was a 6. Because then it's the aspect of how much discomfort can this person take, and how much discomfort does this person need in order to achieve their goals. Again, it's different, but it takes that experience, and it takes that time where you're working with the client. Not only within 4 weeks, I feel like you can kind of get a gauge over a good 6 to 8 weeks, really 10 weeks, because you can see them as they progressively overload. If they can, not only if they can push themselves, is if they can mentally get themselves there for that top set.
Yeah. I feel like recently as well, I've been very much with my training, it was very much with people I'd sort of not keep it similar, like in the sense of like rep scheme and set scheme and all that kind of thing. But now I'm getting very much, I get into the specifics with the person when I'm doing the consultation process, as far as like their experience in the gym goes and experience with intensity and weight of training. And I
Right.
very much gauge the amount of volume that I'm giving that client based on that. Because I tend to find that when I have a beginner client, I like to give them a little bit more volume than someone that is a little bit more experienced, just
100%.
just not so much to gauge intensity, but to like bring intensity to their workouts. And someone that's a little bit more of a beginner as well, I may throw in some supersets. So it's like they can understand what it's like to struggle a little bit more when they're training. They find that like RPE a little bit higher, because to teach someone that they're pushing harder, they sort of do need to seem like they're doing a little bit more, and they have that fatigue. Whereas like I know a lot of people, when you give them a rep range, if I give someone 8 to 12, say, they're going to get to 12, and 9 times out of 10, they're going to stop because they think that's enough. Because it's like,
You're
I
right.
8 to 12, and it's like, well, 12 is the top. So 12 is enough. Because you've said, and it's like, you're the professional, you've told me to do 12 as the most as I can do. But it's like, if you get to 12 and you can do fucking 24, do 24. Just know for the
Right.
next one, you've got to put the weight up. You know what I mean?
That's why the RP was so, like, just adding that in at the end of the notes, just rate the RP for the working set. I
Yeah.
know I said 12 to 15, but if 15 felt like a 6, I'm sorry, next week we're going up. Fuck that. But how do you guys feel about training to failure and volume? Like, especially when you're getting a client that's, let's say you get a client and they're starting a 12-week prep. Is that like a primary factor where you're focusing on maintaining volume down, or you just depends on the person?
With the specific to prep, actually, that's an interesting one. I find it very deep. Obviously, I want to do whatever they can. I say to people often ask me, what is the optimal way to go about training? It's like what you can recover from best while progressively overloading. Obviously, making sure there's sufficient volume, because obviously, if you did 2 sets a session, you would progressively overload and you would recover well. But you want to go max. I like max recoverable volume with progression. what I was going to add to that too, 12-week prep. Let's say it's a 20-week prep, just because a little bit more intricate. Towards the back end of that, it becomes difficult because, like, if recovery was to dwindle, it's like, okay, do we pull out volume? Or if we were to pull out volume, does that jeopardize, like, does that further potentially accelerate muscle loss? And this is something which you can't really quantify. Do you get where I'm going with this?
Right. This
Yeah.
is why, depending on the training age of the individual, I might split the phases. 20 weeks is perfect
Mhm.
because then I can do a 10-week strength phase where we keep the volume low, intensity high, and then once the calories start dropping, hit a high, not a hypertrophy phase because you're not going to be getting as much gains, but the volume scales up a little bit, but the intensity goes down, which is a lot better mentally because they just got out of the phase feeling strong, hitting some 2-rep max, not max PR weight, but like hitting in that range 2 to 5 reps for like their primary strength movement. They're feeling strong, but more importantly, it's your joints, it's your tendons, is you're moving well. And once they get out of that phase, then you can start ramping the volume, but their joints can take it because they just spent 8 to 10 weeks in crushing at a strength phase. Well, that was another game changer for me because I realized, especially with bodybuilding, we kind of like put ourselves in a bubble where it's like, all right, we got to stay 8 to 15, 15 to 20. Like it's okay to, especially on the person that has a little bit more experience, spending some time in the 4 to 6 rep range, spending some times in the, even if it's 4 weeks in the 2 to 4 rep range. Because I feel like not only is that a meant to thing, because a lot of times when you're in prep, you feel weak as shit. And if volume keeps scaling up and calories keep going down and you're taking that hit and hit again, fuck, this weight feels like 1,000 pounds heavier this week. It's a mental hurdle that not only for me, that shit sucked, but I feel like a lot of clients, they kind of lose motivation in the prep that way because they like, first and foremost, especially guys, we like crushing weights. I don't care who you are, ego's number one. You with your bros or whatever, you want to hit some heavy weight on the bench press, you want to hit some heavy deadlifts. So that's where, again, depends on the individual. I'm not saying this is a one size fits all, but like starting with a strength phase, hitting the accessories are still going to be in the 8 to 15 to 20 rep range because you still want that muscular endurance. But if we can actually build some tendon, ligament, endurance, and strength within the first phase of training, I feel like that makes the cut a lot easier in my experience. I'm not sure if you guys mess with that approach.
The only concern I have in changing programs is you get the first few weeks where you do get a little bit more segue in regards to progression. Like you're going to see progression while there's adaptation to the movement. So it's hard to gauge whether there is strength loss. Obviously, learning the skills too of the potentially new movements, you do run into high injury risks. But I do understand the ideology behind how you're approaching it too. And mine's more this hypothesis because I'm less inclined to make significant changes on someone's program in the final, like in 10 weeks of a deficit.
Right.
Yeah.
So going more into specifics. So like I had a client, he again he wanted to get into a fat loss phase. He had 24 weeks. So for the first, I think it was 10 weeks, we did a squat intensive and bench intensive phase. So he had barbell squat, front squat, bench press, maybe twice a week at most, 3 times a week. But again, scaling the volume. But once he finished that phase and the calories started going down, we switched to hack squat. And then we also switched to all machine-based presses. So now that turnover becomes a lot easier because now you also have that density and strength from the strength phase, and you're used to go again acid grass on the squat. It's a little bit different than acid grass on the hack squat. Like that hack squat's a little bit friendlier, so that transition becomes a little bit smoother, especially as the calories drop a bit.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say as well. I find that in the back end of a prep, generally 9 times out of 10, I pull a lot of the free weight movements and transition them over to machines.
100%.
So
Yeah.
I just do it. I look at it from a perspective of just joint health. Like you're more compromised by that point. You got less body fat. You got less fat around the joints. You got less stability there. Like it's just easier, like to sit on a machine opposed to pick up the dumbbells and have to worry about dipping far back or
Yeah.
you throw it up, you come back or whatever it may be. But at the same time as well, it's like, especially with training programs through a prep specifically, I don't really like changing much. Like I feel like whatever you do it, whatever you make for a change at the start of a prep. So 9 times out of 10, what I try to coordinate, or what I've tried to, especially I've got girls going into season B now. I've tried to keep their program. I've tried to do their program so it'll run probably at least 6 to 8 weeks into the start of their prep. And then they'll get new training programs that 6 to 8 weeks in mark. And then that's it. That'll just stay for the entirety of prep. And what I'll do is I'll just make adjustments based on, I guess, like their response. So like if they're like, oh, this is starting to hurt my back, or this is starting to hurt my whatever, just from a joint or a tendon or whatever it may be perspective, make the adjustment there. Or I get to a certain point and I note down on their timeline from about 12 weeks out that I always have a note there that just says reassess training program for like joint health, pain, whatever. You know what I mean? And then
what's your main, when you're let's say you experience a client that not in major injury, but they're experiencing pain after the workouts, is it scaling volume, or do you have a more of a comprehensive approach in terms of
I
strength?
feel like it's just very much dependent on the actual movements itself. So like if I notice it's a common occurrence after that session, look, don't get me wrong. I feel like, yeah, it could be a specific exercise that's in there. I do tend to find that when people, this is very specific. This is very specific to lower back pain that people get in training. I think, and I'm very much convinced that it is always, not always, maybe 9 times out of 10, it is just poor erector strength that people get lower back pain. And I feel like people very much steer clear of movements that load the erectors because they see weakness through the erectors as an injury that's going to happen.
That's why for me the strength phase was so important, because I also deal with a lot of gym pop, and back pain is like one of the #1 chief complaints. And a lot of times there's like, oh, I gotta strengthen my core, I gotta do bird dogs, I gotta do clams. At the end of the day, you don't rotate, your back is weak as fuck, and you have no glutes. That's what I see 100% of the time with back pain.
Yeah.
So that's where it's like some people, especially as you get deeper in the deficit, you're losing body fat all over, you're losing muscle all over. And a lot of times it might be a biomechanical compensation, but it also could be you just don't have the strength there. You just don't have the strength there, which is why the hack squat's important, the leg extension is important. But that's why I feel like, especially when you're dealing with a client that has that just a specific, not like an exercise pain, but an overall pain, like after a workout or during, that's where the focus has to like switch back and forth a little bit. So like, all right, we're still focusing on the hamstring hypertrophy, but let's back off deadlifts. But you can't be scared to do hyperextensions. Back extensions on the weighted back extensions. Like it sucks during, you feel a pump, but it's something where the long-term benefit, it's so great in terms of like during a fat loss phase.
Yeah.
But even with deadlifts and hyperextension, a lot of people don't drive through their glutes anyway.
At all, no.
Hard skill to teach too, because typically I found if you're really trying to bring someone's deadlift up, you'll find when someone hits like I'm sure you've seen this through personal training, because that's where I saw it. You see people have like a consistent plateau, like across an extended period of time, where like calorie load's high, recovery is good, whatever else through the deadlift. And 9 times out of 10, when they are at this point, you do realize that they actually don't engage through their glutes. And then you do have to break it. I've had situations where you have to break it all the way down to make sure they are engaging the glutes to drive. Because the guys who deadlift the big weights, or girls, they are driving through the glutes.
But they also just the overall mind to muscle connection. They can plant their feet on the ground and already feel themselves stabilizing through their hamstrings and glutes. That's a game changer in terms of execution for the movement. Then a lot of times people just stick their butt out, whatever, they're doing the movement, but the engagement's different. So that's where it's like learning which exercises to interchange, but learning when to do it too. And learning when you have to communicate to a client that, okay, you're feeling discomfort, but we got to get stronger here. There's that double-edged sword where they have to trust you, but you also have to be able to communicate to them that, all right, I'm not going to treat you like you're 80 years old. You're 25 and you're experiencing lower back pain. Maybe there's a phase where we need to push the strength a little bit, get the overall, with the quote unquote functional strength, whatever bullshit they're marketing now, but just get stronger, especially because you want to prepare yourself to go into prep. Where a lot of times feel like they just jump into prep and their body's a mess. They got tight shoulders, shitty range of motion, And I mean, I fell victim to that too. Just overall, just heavy pressing, heavy squatting, and then once I get into a calorie deficit, my joints are falling apart. So that's something huge I learned within the last, I mean, over 10 years, but especially within the last 5 years, really focusing on that, preventing pain during prep, and also making sure I'm staying on top of the clientele where they're communicating to me, but I'm also telling them, hey, if you feel any tweaks here and there, even if it's lightly, let me know so that way we can scale the volume back, or we can add different exercises to combat that pain.
Yeah, and it's like when I get people, especially this is particularly males, not so much females, and they come and then it's like in the initial consult, they're like, oh, I get a little bit of lower back pain. I'm like, sweet, no worries. And I put in hip thrusts in their program, and then eventually I get to a point and they're like, man, can I just get rid of these hip thrusts? It's like I'm skipping them. And it's like, man, you told me you had a sore lower back all the time. It's like, I'm guaranteeing you that your glutes are fucking weak as. And it's like, you probably don't train them. I'm like, yeah, you probably squat. I'm like, yeah, fair enough. I'm like, you still got to remember to squat 9 times out of 10. Well, again, it's like your quads are very on, but because people really do struggle to activate their glutes a lot of the time, I find on a squat, especially something like a hack squat or whatever, just depends on foot placement a lot of the time. But then you got to worry about mobility and all that kind of shit. But they're just like, yeah, man, I'm just not doing the hip thrusts. I'm like, well, that's fucking why your lower back hurts. Like, just do the hip thrusts, like do the glute movements, and you'll find
Yeah.
your lower
Yeah,
back.
and training Gen Pop, I've seen some crazy things with compound movements. Like you think doing a bicep curl is gonna hit the biceps. I've seen people use their traps. I've seen people use their pec minor. I've seen people like do insane things. So especially with the hip thrust, the first thing that comes to mind, that person probably has big calves and drives to their feet and gets almost zero hamstring and glute activation and finish the movement with their quads.
Yeah.
I've seen that before, and that's something where, especially if you're not, again, it's going to be hard, especially if you have virtual clients, but if you're not seeing that execution for the working set, it's going to be very hard to tell because sometimes people like they hit their numbers and they're like, oh, that was a success. Like, but were you connected with the muscles throughout the set?
Yeah. And I
That's
feel like
where,
something like a hip thrust, people can very much get taken away with like the numbers that they put on it because they do it and they're like, this is easy. But it's like you actually using your glutes. Like I hip thrust. I get on a machine hip thrust, like the Nautilus one with like the belt, for example. I get on that and I do like 2 plates aside on it. And it's
I
like,
was just about to say that 2 plates is good.
yeah, like, and I'm doing 2 plates and like I'm struggling on it. And then I see fucking these girls get on it and they're chucking like 5 plates aside, 4 plates aside. And I'm like, there is no way that is all glute. When I have 2 plates aside on it, I'm like shaking through my glutes because I'm like all glute. Like I can't feel anything else. Like it's just hard. You know what I mean? So I feel like
Yeah, so I think that's a factor of the programming that's out there now. Because that's another thing that I was very curious about when the whole glute fascination exploded. I was like, all right, it's great. I love when people get to the gym. That's our biggest thing in America. Obesity is going straight up. So I just want people to work out. So if you're working out just to get a fat ass, whatever, go for it. A lot of times I see people, the programs, it's like barbell hip thrust, 4 sets, 15. Sumo dumbbell squat, 4 sets, 15. Walking lunge, leaning forward, 4 sets, 15. I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? But then I see people in the gym, like you said, they'll throw on the plates and they'll pump up the reps because it's what they see on Instagram. They see the influencer with the big butt, or they see the pro bodybuilder throwing a lot of weight again, which is great. But can you imagine if we like, let's say for the pecs on the incline press, just throw on 4 plates and just do some shitty partial range of motion? It's it's insane, but it's the same thing.
yeah.
Like either your activation's not there or you're using a crazy amount of momentum. Like a dumbbell row. That's something I see a lot of gym bros do completely wrong. You get 120 pounds, you rotate forward, you use your obliques, yank back, you got a set of 10, but you got 0 lat activation. Or you only activated teres major and some scapula and trap muscles, but no lat activation, which is, again, they're working out, they're getting the working sets done. But in order to teach that mind to muscle connection, it's something where you have to be a really good coach, but you also have to be willing to tell them to scale back, chill, and just focus on that, not only the execution with the form, but hitting those last 3 to 4 reps, maintaining decent form. not being a form Nazi, but at least not getting sloppy with it either.
Yeah, so I say a lot of my clients as well. I'll be like, all right, do your rep range 8 to 12. Let's make sure the reps are pretty much perfect. It's like when you get to that point of mechanical failure, I'd say that's where you draw the line. So like say they get to 11 and they're hitting that mechanical failure point. I'm like, you log 11. I'm like, but go beyond 11.
Right.
Sense?
Right.
It's
Again,
like
a little cheating's okay. A little
exactly.
cheating
And
is
I'm like, if you get like 3 little cheat shit reps, it's like that's going to be more beneficial than you stopping at 11.
yeah, but you know what's beautiful is when a client, let's say they record that set where they cheat for the last 2 reps, and then in 2 weeks they fucking hit that execution solid. That's progression to me.
Yeah.
They didn't hit 2 or 3 or 4 more reps, but they were solid, they were comfortable with it. So then the next time they're a little bit more confident to either hit heavier weight or to approach those extra reps to failure.
Yeah.
Which is crazy because it's painful. But teaching that is. But I was gonna ask, what changed in terms of not only programming, but something you look back on and you guys are just like, ugh, I don't know why I programmed that way.
Lots of sets.
Yeah, I used to do like 4 working sets per exercise. Sometimes I still do that.
For
Depends.
you or for your clients?
Hmm?
For
Oh, for
you or for your
clients, yeah. Do you do how many working sets do you typically set up for yourself or clients?
For me, I at most depends on the day. Like for hamstrings, I have my top set. Like I'm in the strength phase right now. I have a 1 working set for deadlifts,
Hmm.
2 for hamstring, 2 for hamstring curls, and 2 for the weighted back extensions.
So yeah, I'd occasionally back earlier days I would do 4 sets per exercise.
Yeah.
Now typically it's 2 to 3 at the most, but there is instances where I do revert back to 4. Things that I would have done strangely, it's hard to really answer that. Definitely lots of intricate exercises and sort of a lot of overlap exercises too. I think that's just from trying to address too much at once.
Yeah.
It's
like three of the same pressing variation.
Probably having things in absolutes is probably the biggest one as well.
Okay.
Like I sort of thought, yeah, this is the way that this needs to be done for things to be optimal. When realistically, it's just never the way it is. You know how it goes.
Right. So let's say for chest, like
Mhm.
in previous programming, you're hitting incline barbell, incline Smith, and then like an incline machine repetitive that way, or is it just
Repetitive, it would probably not as much on the chest movements. Yes, it is what you mean. But like, for example, I potentially throw in a barbell bench press, yeah, and then go into like a machine chest press and think, oh no, because it converges, it's better. Which, yeah, like it's a different movement for that reason. Yeah, I find that overlaps more when it comes to the back. Obviously, when it comes to legs or heaps of squat patterns, heaps of higher rep sort of variations towards the end of sessions too. I was going to ask you as well, what are your thoughts on sumo variations?
So with powerlifting or hypertrophy?
Hypertrophy.
That's the thing. It depends on the person.
Mm.
Because I can get I'm not gonna force someone with shitty hip internal rotation to do sumo deadlifts just because they think that's better for their glutes. Like I'd rather you hit a regular Romanian deadlifts where you can at least stabilize your pelvis. Because a lot of times the missing link is range of motion. Most
Mm.
people have external rotation of the hip, but they don't have internal. So let's say for a squat and you see someone's knees go in, it's not because their glute is weak, it's just that they don't have that internal rotation there. So their body is fighting in order to get that range, especially to explode off to the top. So what I see a lot of times that people might not notice because it's such a slight little change in form is when people are doing sumos, they're not spreading the floor and driving through their glutes the entire time.
Usually,
I've seen it,
yeah.
but I've seen it where I have friends and they pull sumo pretty much 8 months out of the year. And then during their high reps, they can reset and allow themselves to get to not only maintain external rotation, but to drive with force. To drive with force and activation, 2 different things. You can create force and just use your leverages to maximize it. But if your focus is glute hypertrophy, just focus on the hip extensions. Focus on the glute kickbacks. Focus on the the back extensions weighted. To me, sumo deadlifts, it's again depends on the person. It's such a hard exercise to progress with hypertrophy because there's so many factors that break down.
Yeah, I do think one of the things I did used to do regularly, I used to change programming frequently as well. I was thinking about that as throughout that time. Like I'd always change programming at like 8 weeks. I was like, yeah, but 8 weeks you need a complete overhaul of the program. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Yeah. Also,
because
just
again,
yeah.
it's that mental aspect too, where people you gotta keep it spicy. You gotta keep people interested. So when people see fancy new exercises on the program, they're like, "Oh yeah, I'm down." But at the end of the day, most people they don't need that. Maybe change one or two compound movements, or if you're changing from back squats to hack squats, yeah, it's good. But the main thing it's the consistency over time, which I think it's gonna be the hardest part, especially during a fat loss phase. Well, when you question sumo deadlifts, did you mean in like that's something that you incorporate now, or you're backing
No,
away?
no, I've just seen a few programming elements lately where people do sumo variations for deadlifts, and even I saw one the other day with sumo RDLs, and I just thought, is there something I'm missing? Like, like
No, no,
maybe, yeah. I don't think
no,
so. Yeah.
no.
Yeah. It's
Again,
even like I saw like sumo squats, and I just thought to myself, why would you ever do that? Like there's no purpose. Like
again,
I'm talking
it's
sumo deficit squats I saw. Like so you're on that, you got the bar between your legs and you're coming down, and I'm thinking, oh well, fuck, I must have missed something here. Yeah.
no, it's again, it's people. It's not reinventing anything. It's more they're cycling around because there was a few years ago where I remember. I don't know if it was Brett Contreras or whoever it was.
Hmm.
These glute guys.
Yeah.
Every
What
sumo
about
deadlifts was
today? Yeah.
the rage. Sumo deadlifts was the rage a couple of years ago. It was like everybody was sumoing, and I think either Paul Carter or somebody was like, "Oh, sumo is not glutes," and then everybody backed away from it. So now you're right. I'm seeing it more, but I think it's a factor of the influencer culture when it comes to exercise selection, where it's like, what are people not doing right now? Let's prioritize this. All right, that's it. Sumos are back for glutes.
Hmm.
When really it's like for most people it's adductors and maybe you get some quads, but sumo RDLs, do them fine if that's something that you like to do. But in terms of hypertrophy, there's so many other better choices out there.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I thought that would be a point that's completely missed. I think when it comes to training, people need to acknowledge that it's going to come down to tracking your workouts, consistency in your workouts, progressively overloading your workouts with your injury profiles, and of course allocating towards the muscle groups which you want to attenuate.
And
Like
enjoying it.
everything else comes second to that.
I think
Right, right.
the
Yeah.
most important ones.
Mm.
Like
But
actually,
what about cardio? Have you guys changed at all in terms of cardio for fat loss?
I feel like it's a hard one with cardio, man, because like I'm prepping, like I mentioned to you, like 21 clients, 22 clients. I have one girl that's doing an hour a day, and I have another girl,
Hour every day?
I have an hour per day cardio.
Okay.
And then I'll have another girl who's doing none.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's very
Right.
hard
So
to give a
but
definitive.
you've always been that way. Like it's not a one size fits all approach
No,
when
it's
it
not a
comes to
one size fits all. Yeah, but in regards to like a general rule of thumb, I was probably more averse to cardio earlier than I am now. Now I bring it earlier than what I am now. Now I'm more willing to bring it in more aggressively if I need to. But I'm sure you've seen this as well. The reason I answer so vaguely is because sometimes more doesn't elicit the response that you think more will.
what I've noticed is again, we live a different lifestyle than most people, especially if they're going to prep. So once you increase cardio, there's such a risk of just overall stress and cortisol levels shooting
Mhm.
through the roof, where their body just it's hard for them to bounce back properly in the prep. So
Yeah.
I usually now like I've kind of gone away from fasted cardio 100%.
Mhm.
Like if it's great if you can do it, but if you can get that extra hour or two of sleep, I feel
Mhm.
like that'll benefit you a lot more. Again, those last 6 to 8 weeks of prep, and if you're down for the fucking torture, sometimes you have to push it to the limit. But I feel like most people get your sleep, hit your 12,000 to 15,000 steps, and then post training you can do your 30 minutes of cardio. And then
Mhm.
progress that way 20, 30, 40. But a lot of times, if you're in a phase where you sleep 4 or 5 hours a night to wake up to do fasted cardio, I've rarely seen it where it's like I've seen crazy benefits right away. A lot of times people, I mean, again, depends on the headspace, but a lot of times people break down mentally, and then their progress maybe stalls a little bit. But then there's also the beast where they're like, they wake up, they take their supplements to help combat the loss of sleep. They keep their cardio regimen is locked down, the nutrition's locked down, and they can make up for those that 1 or 2 hours of lost sleep. Again, it depends, but
It's
it's
a bit
something that changes.
It's a bit of a tough one, fasted cardio for me, because obviously in the presence of like lipolytics, so if you had like growth hormone, cleniohimbine in, then obviously it's almost necessary. But at the
Right.
same time, what fasted cardio is going to do for me is it opens up another window where they're inducing thermogenesis external to the training session. So I feel like by lumping that onto the back of the session, they don't get the same, I guess, results that they would from the fasted, because then that lumps that, like, what was it called? They used to call it like the post-exercise thermogenesis, I guess. Yeah. So by doing that AM, PM, you're getting both. But like at the same time, if you're jeopardizing sleep, yeah, then obviously that's not
Yeah,
practical.
so that's where I dive deep into that, and a lot of times they did I can send you the studies after. They did super high intensity first thing in the morning fasted, and I think it was about 20, again, small sample, 20 people. They received maybe a 5 to 7% boost in daily thermic output.
Mm-hmm.
So basically they burned maybe 50 to 100 calories more throughout the day.
Mm-hmm.
Again, this is again they weren't taking external supplements. That was just them doing high intensity, and they were actually gauging how much more calories these people were burning throughout the day, and it was only 5 to 7% more. So in that case, that's where I'm like, just get your fucking sleep and get your steps in. Now, when it comes to like you said, throwing in supplements is a whole nother game.
Yeah.
A whole
Yeah.
nother game where when you're approaching in the fasted cardio and when you're approaching the latter stages of prep, where you got to jump over that mental hurdle. But it's good to have both aspects where you know it's like you creating 2 windows, but also realizing that if that person does it first thing in the morning, they're 100% not going to skip their post-workout cardio. Because what happens a lot of times, you do a training session, and then when it comes to those 20, 30 minutes of cardio, however it may be, they either half-ass it, don't have the fuel for it, or they just skip it completely. So I see both aspects of it. I think it's just individualized, depends on the person.
I drive a lot of the cardio to be done post-workout because I know people are less likely to be lazy and go twice to the gym.
That's another aspect, yeah. Yeah.
I encourage them to buy a machine.
If they can do it from home, yeah, they can do that. But at the same time, it's like I just tell a lot of my clients. The other thing is as well, back onto the half-ass side of things, like you said, it's like I get a lot of them to do it post-workout because I know their heart rate most of the time should be a little bit more elevated. So they're able to push into that higher range of heart rate at post-workout. And I also just feel like it's just easier. Like you're fucking there. It's like, what are you gonna do? Go home. Like,
Right.
like just do it.
How do you feel in terms of when let's say somebody's building to, like you said, that you have someone that's an hour per cardio a day.
Mm-hmm.
How soon do you notice the adaptations? Because I've noticed that within 2 to 3 weeks,
Mm-hmm.
that person adaptive heart rate starts dropping. It's hard for them to get it over 140, 150. And if they do try to push it high intensity, it's like they're dying doing it. It's like either the bike or the Stairmaster is
That's
not
fun.
as advantageous. So
Yeah, sorry. The aerobic adaptation occurs quite quickly.
yeah,
Yeah, like relatively quickly. So like, because a lot of them sort of reach a point where they say, I can't keep the heart rate above 120, and sort of just say we just have to wear this. Like if you try to push it above 130, 120, 130 at that point of conditioning, like your legs are going to be destroyed. Yeah,
yeah.
like
So something
yeah,
that I
adaptations I
well,
see even less time. But yeah, go on.
yeah, so if you're going, so let's say this is just in my experience, noticed something that worked for me. I had a client, same thing. She was stuck 120 and she's fucking, you can't go level 12 on the Stairmaster, you fall off and
Yeah.
die. So what I told her was, so after her initial weight training, because she was doing post-workout, we did 5 minutes one day was even 3 minutes. 3 minutes high intensity.
Mhm.
Get your heart rate 160. Get on the air bike. Get on a crazy rowing machine. Whatever worst machine you got there.
Mhm.
Do a 15-second round with 60 seconds recovery. Do a 15-second rounds, 90 seconds recovery. Your overall heart rate is going to be higher at that point. That's when you jump on the low intensity stuff or the moderate intensity stuff. The heart rate's going to stay at that 135 to 140.
Mhm.
For
Yeah.
her, that it worked perfectly because she couldn't get it to the point where the Stairmaster or the bike wasn't high intensity enough to the point where she could have made, because she could have got it there. She really forced it, but she would have been dying. She wouldn't be able to do 30 minutes. But after doing those 3 to 5 minutes of the hit work in the beginning, again, it's not plyo shit. It's literally like specific. Either do a bike or do a row, get the heart rate jacked. So that way, when you get on it, you're able to at least maintain that 130 to 145 range.
Yeah, well, it's like when I start prep, I'm like on level 3 on the Stairmaster, and my heart rate's like 150. I feel like I'm gonna die.
Yeah. Yeah.
I get to like,
Outside, just walking up the stairs to your
yeah,
house.
like, and then I get like 10, 12 weeks in, and it's like, shit, I gotta put this thing on like level 9, level 10 now,
Yeah.
like you're pushing it. But yeah, literally, I do what you just said. So what I actually do is when I'm doing my cardio, I'll get on the Stairmaster bike cross trainer, whatever it may be. And I do intervals for the first like 5 to 10 minutes. So like I will have it on like level 12, 13, 14, pacing for like 20 seconds. Then I put it down to like 6 and I just walk for like 20. And then I'll do it
And
again.
that's what a lot of people got to realize with high intensity training, less is more.
Mm.
I'd rather you do 3 minutes all killing yourself all out, takes blood. So that way, when you do go into that moderate intensity work, you're at a pace where you can at least maintain it. Well, a lot of people they think high intensity hit is 15, 20, 30. I'm like, no, at that point, you're either half-assing it or it's not really true high intensity. It's like you're doing plyo jumps or whatever, your heart rate's up a little bit, but it's not max effort. For that max effort, I need at least, depending on the person and their age, if I could get 175 to 180 in that 15-second hit circuit, then that's going to translate a lot better. Which again, you got to find a client that's willing to go through that type of pain, and that's another factor that's difficult.
I know John Jewett is huge on hit training at the moment.
Yeah, yeah, that's literally
Massive on
Do you know why?
No. I just see him doing it now and he programs it a lot. There's
I
reason.
think that's something a glycolytic response in terms of because he does a lot of
Doesn't do
fasted
it
cardio
long.
too.
Yeah, but he
But
doesn't do long for hit. I think it's like 10 minutes post workout. He does like battle rope,
exactly.
something else.
Yeah, so it could be a combination of the epoch, the thermogenesis throughout the day, or it could be a lot of times when you're that big too, you just got to improve your cardio. You gotta your output at that point, especially during a fat loss phase. If you can get at least if you can do 5 to 10 minutes with that hit work, it's tough, especially when you're at that weight. When you're over 250 pounds, 300 pounds, it's no joke. So
Yeah.
that's where the
He's trying to find the bit
So
where
you guys keep going. I'll see if I can
Yeah.
find it. What
Yeah,
he
no,
said.
it's not something that I've really ever prioritized with anyone. I can't, not that I can think of. Maybe for a little bit of time efficacy, or just because the individual actually wants that to feel good. That would be more like part of a health plan than anything else. Do you know what I mean?
yeah, yeah,
Because
which is
you do need to test the thresholds higher. Muscle nerds were really big on that. Do you remember muscle nerds?
yeah.
Yeah, they were really big on the high saying how like you need to really experience like true high intensity, like heart rate, like as close to close to max, to really be able to reap like cardiac benefits to their highest degree. And
Right. Which in terms of do you see any benefit? Like let's say that someone's at the beginning of a prep where the calories they have some carbs in the system. Like if you add in hit maybe once or twice a week in terms of benefiting their long-term progress.
it's not something that I've really experienced, played around with, but at the same time, I feel like it may be superior in potentially preserving glycogen for longer. But at the
Yeah.
same time, I feel like it's something which is going to be so difficult to quantify that it's difficult to really, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
which is again, you have to have I like to stick to one or two pieces of equipment, either the air bike or there's the Versa climber. I don't know if you guys have I mean,
No,
I've seen
What's
Versus
that?
climber is like, no, it's almost like, if a firefighter is going up a building,
Yeah, I never used
Yeah,
it. Yeah.
I've never used it.
but it's a machine. It's one of the worst things ever. But a
Yeah.
lot of times those machines, if they have a target, I usually tell a client like, okay, in 15 seconds, get as many calories as possible. And again, maybe the first 2 times they'll get 10 or 12 or whatever. But each time I'm telling them to go all out to try to hit a higher number. The whole point is not about crushing those number goals. It's more about get that high intensity number. So that way, when you do get your heart rate over 165, hitting that 170 range is going to translate a lot better when you go right into your steady state cardio. Again, depends on the person. It's painful. Like your nose is like, you could taste blood, basically. It's one of the worst things. But if you want to have fun, throw it into your training every once in a while. Are you starting a fat loss phase soon?
It's myself.
Yeah.
No.
Just wrapped up.
No.
No.
Okay.
No. What about you?
Maybe in 3 weeks. Let me see.
Yeah.
Because I'm
I don't know.
yeah,
I got a while. Yeah.
yeah. The thing is with work and everything else takes a step back. And
Mm.
the
Yeah.
thing is when you experience a prep like that multiple times,
Mm.
the mental toll it could take. That's actually a perfect transition to the mental aspect of
Mm.
coaching. I guess what do you guys have learned about clientele and the mental health approach when you guys are
I find
clients?
with mental health, I have a couple with like significant mental health conditions as well. That's something you never really. It's such a fine line when you're dealing with comp prep clients
Yeah.
because you're torn between nurturing their mental health and nurturing the prep process to a point where you don't really know. You can't really take one way or the other. Well, you have to take one way or the other, but it doesn't mean that one way is right and one way is wrong. For example, you have a competitor who's having mental health issues. They pretty much pitch how much they're struggling. You want to say to them, hey, I think it's best that we sort of put this on the sidelines and we just focus on getting your mental health right. But then you know that deep down, if they were to park the comp prep, that's going to be worse for their mental health.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it becomes a very gray area. In regards to generally speaking, it's a tough one. It's a tough one to address. Do you find why don't we start with you?
Well, it's the different aspects, like you said, it's tough, but at the end of the day, it's not my decision where to steer a client. I can just give them all the information, list out the pros and cons. And like you said, if someone gets out of prep, they might be worse for a day or two, but then they might be better off in the long run.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're pushing their client, you're constantly pushing them, and they're either feeling like shit about their body, feeling like shit about um the prep in general, like they're not satisfied, or just feeling shit like when it comes to just overall, like going to work, talking to family. They don't feel good or they don't feel motivated to keep the process going. Once you lay all that out on the table, a lot of times people I feel like gravitate towards what they truly want to do. So when someone goes into a fat loss phase or a contest prep just because they wanted likes on Instagram, those people usually stop and they're okay with stopping. The people I think have a lot of time a hard time stopping is when they have announced it on Instagram. They're
Yeah.
like, "Oh, hello everyone, I'm competing in 12 weeks and
Mm.
blah blah blah." It's like they set that expectation, then they feel like they're letting everyone down. That's
Yeah.
when I tell people, it's like, don't let do if you're truly doing this for yourself, run your Instagram like regular. You can post progress pictures like that, but don't make it this dire on the sword situation because it's not real. It's like it's all in their head. So, and then like let's say someone drops out, they feel like they have to make this post where it's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry, but I had to back out because of this. It's like, no, if this was truly for you, who gives a shit what people think?
Yeah.
Who gives a shit if you have to take a 4 week diet break? Because your mental health is number one.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's different. There's some clients where it's like, fuck it, I want to get first place, this and that. Then that client, you can kind of push them. You can kind of steer them in
Funny
certain
when you say that. I was talking to my partner yesterday about like coming out of prep or like whatever. And I was like, I think I would have to be fucking dying to pull out of prep. Like right now, like I would have to be admitted into the hospital for me to pull out a prep. Like I shit you not, I'm not even kidding. Like
How many weeks?
I'd have to get blood tests back that say like I'm dying for me to pull out of my prep.
But yeah, as
How many weeks? How many weeks you have left?
3 to the first one.
3 to the first one, 12 to the
Yeah,
last.
that's different.
Oh,
That's different.
fuck. No, it's 10, it's 10, 12. Wow.
Like
No,
I'd have
yeah.
to be, but like even had I been halfway through, I'd have to be dying to pull out. You'd have
And
to
how?
kill me.
Yeah, but talk specifically, like mental health wise. Do you feel like you're in a good state where it's like,
Oh, absolutely.
Obviously, yeah.
yeah,
That's what I
clearly.
mean, yeah.
But it's just the way you manage it. Like it's how you manage it.
I have found
And
that
comp prep's temporary.
I have found that dealing with clients, I do get clients that swap coaches because they don't have that sense of direction. I think if you don't have that communication sense of direction, that's when things become a lot harder to deal with mentally. So that really eases a lot of the mental strain on it. But I will just loop back that mental health and
It's
bodybuilding
the most
don't
important.
go hand in hand.
They don't.
And obviously I could sit here and be super cliche and say mental health is the most important, blah, 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 which it obviously it's very important. But if you have any concerns here, don't engage in bodybuilding preps.
That's
It's not,
the biggest thing.
yeah, it's
But
not
if you are predisposed for things like depression, anxiety, and things like that, you really have to do this for yourself. Like I tell clients, like don't like even if it's not like a serious competition, but you want to do it for the first time, you have to be able to realize that when you step back, this stuff really doesn't matter in the long term. This is something you're doing for yourself. And if you want to improve yourself and if you want to learn something on the journey, it literally has to be for yourself. You're not doing this for anybody else.
Yeah.
And that's where I feel like people find the most success is when they can be able to at least get that perspective. It's like, all right, I'm doing this because I want to do it. No one's holding a gun to my head. But again, it gets tricky with social media and then sponsors and blah, blah, blah. It becomes this whole letting people down, this fear of failure.
Yeah, and that's another good thing. Like you said, like no one's holding a gun to your head as well. And like that's quite often I get to that point where when I'm like anybody, right? In my prep, I have shit days. I'm saying you have to kill me to pull out, right? But I have days where I wake up and I'm like, oh, I don't want to do this. Or I get to the end of the day, I'm like, oh, it's fucking 8:30 at night. I have to do 5,000 steps, like things like that. But that's literally what I do. I literally sit there and I tell myself, I'm like, who is holding a gun to my head telling me that I need to do this? It's like
Bingo.
I've gone out of my way and chosen to do this, and it's like I'm like what like who is to blame? I have no one to blame. Like Michael coaching me, Michael's not sitting there saying you have to do it,
right?
You know what I mean? And it's like I have to for these 5K steps that I have to get now at 8 o'clock at night when my legs are already fucking killing me. I don't want to do it. It's like it's my fault. I chose to do this. You know what I mean?
Right, but then you have the clients where you have to give them the pep talk.
Yeah.
I had clients cry. I had clients tell me they had anxiety attacks when they wake up in the morning and they're not having the physique they want, not at the weight that they want. And I'm just like, God damn it, I need a degree in psychology.
Yeah, no, I feel like that too. But if you love the process, then it's not a concern. I think
there's aspects of a specific story. He's probably not gonna get mad. He doesn't give a shit. But I had a client that had problems with binging. He'll be great 6 days a week, maybe Saturday or Sunday. We give a little refeed. He didn't want refeeds at all because his brain was so programmed to binging that he just wanted to stay away from it. And I told him, like, oh, you've been depleted. It's been 5 weeks. Let's give you a refeed. Whatever. He just added in some rice, some carbs, some potato, kept it clean. But then he ended up binging cookies and potato chips and all this other stuff at the night. And during one of the training sessions, I'm talking to him and he's telling me this story about when he was a kid. They grew up poor, and when his mom would get food stamps once a month, him and his brothers would get cookies. But it was like a couple cookies. So what he would do is that he would save them. So that way, at the end of the month, when he has like a whole stack of cookies, he would eat them all in one sitting. And he did this for years. And I was just like, man, you should go to a therapist to talk about that because I think that's why you binge. He was like, what? I was like, you're associating food. Look, we all associate good memories with food and we go out to drinks. And when there's the emotional aspect with food is very tightly close together. So with this guy specifically, is that all his childhood memories when he was having a good time was when he was binging cookies.
Hmm.
So that was an aspect of not only dieting where I was like, okay, maybe this guy doesn't need a super high carb day. Maybe we just spread it across to make sure we can combat that potential aspect of him binging. And that's where I realized again, it might not be the most optimal approach, but for his mental health, that's where I had to tailor the diet. Okay, he's not gonna respond well to a carb cycling approach. All right, let's keep it moderate and let's see if that's better for him. So far, it's been good, but if your client is aware of their deficiencies or if they have habits that are that they struggle with in general, there is that psychological aspect where unless we really know the person, it's hard to figure out ways to not fix it, but to ways to for them to finish a prep with them being in a good state. Because a lot of times people finish prep and then they develop eating disorders, and it
Mm.
just it becomes to a point where the prep was one aspect, but once they finish prep, they deprive themselves so much, and their psychology with food is all warped that they balloon up or they just completely trash their bodies after that, which I think is another risk for people that are half in and half out. I feel like bodybuilders, especially meatheads like us, we can finish a prep, have fun for a week, and then get back on track.
Mhm.
But a lot of people aren't like that, which that's where it's important to kind of you got to know who you're working with.
The therapist comment as well. I feel like I have noticed a lot of people with eating disordered eating that I've worked with are very opposed to seeing a therapist. Like they almost think that like there's some kind of solution that I can provide that the therapist can't. And the reality is there's a stigma around the therapy as well. So whether it's they've had a bad experience or they don't think they've actually got a problem or anything like that. But if you are resorting to food, a little bit of an extreme example, which I'm going to use, but you can probably you'll be able to make sense of it. For anyone listening, they'll be like, how did he just make that comparison? If you're using food as for a sense of relief and comfort and satisfaction, is very similar to how a drug addict would utilize drugs for that.
Same
And
thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
you're still trying to elicit a response in the brain. You're still resorting to some kind of outlet to numb pain to a degree as well. Like if that requires to deal with that does require therapy. Like you shouldn't have
Yeah.
to eat till you're sick every single time you eat. Like
Exactly.
he'll be like, oh, but you do it too, Michael. It's like I'm well aware that I'm well aware when I do it. Do you know what I mean?
That's what I was just about to say.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
a lot of times you can not get away with it. It's okay if you just mindfulness practice, be present in the moment. Be like, all right, I'm gonna binge. I'm gonna eat 9 boxes of pizza, and I'm gonna feel like shit, but I'm gonna get back on track the next day. A lot of times people don't realize what they're doing in the moment. So if someone's stressed, they grab the box of cookies. If someone's having a bad day, they grab the alcohol. Again, drugs and alcohol, those are used to numb. You're numbing yourself and you're kind of ignoring your problems. With food is a little bit different because you want yourself to feel good. And like I said about the childhood thing, a lot of our nice memories as kids, eating ice cream, watching cartoons, eating cereal, those are memories that make us feel good. So as an adult, a lot of times we go to those things,
Mm.
especially someone that's struggling with like binging and things. We go to those things to just help us feel good at that moment.
Yeah.
But if you're mindful and you just sit there and you're like, okay, I'm gonna have 5 cookies. This sucks. My progress might take a step back, but guess what? Tomorrow morning I'm gonna fucking crush it. I'm gonna go to the next step. I'm not gonna punish myself because I ate fucking 3 cookies. I'm gonna just keep going with the program. I'm gonna talk to Michael. I'm gonna tell him what I did, and we're gonna keep moving forward. So as long as you're opening, like you said, you know your clients, but you're also opening that line of communication where they see the long-term progress. And a lot of times people are open to it. I know why people are against therapists. To me, at this point, it's a fucking scam.
Hmm.
BetterHelp, BetterHelp is on every fucking podcast.
Hmm.
Everyone's pushing drugs. Everyone has anxiety, depression, whatever. And a lot of times is maybe you do need to talk to someone, but it doesn't have to be a licensed professional. Talk to your brother, talk to your sister, talk to your cousin, talk to your mom. Just be like, I'm feeling this way. I don't know why. I just need to talk to someone. And sometimes just getting the words out, especially when it comes to food and binging, that's an aspect of mindfulness that can help you be present in the moment. Again, I'm not a fucking therapist. Don't take my word as gospel, but it's just things I experience. Because I train a lot of Gen Pop. I train a lot of general regular people that work 9 to 5s that have kids and they struggle with these things. They run $1 million businesses and they struggle with things as simple as eating protein 3 to 4 times a day.
Yeah.
So it's things like that where it's no longer not knowing their information. It's just applying it and getting past those psychological barriers.
Yeah, one of the best things I actually ever did was because I used to be very much like that. And I feel like when I'd go out for dinner, I'd sit there and I'd get a meal and I have to finish this meal, right? Or
Right.
I'd overorder because I'd be like, I want this, but I also want this. And then I'd be like, fuck it, let's just get both. Like things like that. And the turning point for me and the best thing that happened was I got to a point where I'm like, I taught myself that I'm like, the food is always going to be there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but that was my biggest thing. But you know what that is? When growing up poor, we don't have that luxury of eating out
Yeah.
as kids and stuff all the time.
Yeah.
A lot of times it's like I can't leave fucking food on this plate
Yeah, I know,
because
I know. But that's
I
also
gotta
another thing as well, like leaving the food on the plate. Like that's something you get taught when you're being brought up. Like I remember it'd be like,
yeah,
you wouldn't eat like your vegetables or whatever, and it'd be like, oh, you know, there's like starving kids in Africa.
right. Clean
It's
the
like
plate.
There's
yeah.
bananas going off and you have
Oh,
to
it's
eat
like
them.
you got to eat it. Like
Yeah.
it was like the best thing that I ever did was getting to a point where I was like, if I really like, say I go to some restaurant, it's like if I really want this food again, I can come back to this restaurant tomorrow. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like
Yeah.
in a perfect world, like I can get this tomorrow if I really, really wanted to, or I can come back here next week, whatever it may be. Like it's always going to be here. So it's like, but like I was always in that mindset where it's like, I'm here, I need to finish this. Like this needs to be finished. Like I have to finish it. And it's like ever since I had that mindset shift of just being like, nah, it's all right. Or it's like, oh, I don't need to overorder or whatever it may be. And it's just like with my eating and like binge eating or just overeating when I go out for dinner, it's completely changed. Like it makes it so
Yeah, that's something you won't see with a lot of times people won't even admit that. Sometimes people are embarrassed on that approach, especially when it comes to binging. But it's
yeah.
something weird. Like I used to like if I got a new iPhone, I will always keep the box
Oh, I
because
still
I don't know.
Yeah, I
'Cause
do.
I'm like I feel like somebody's gonna take it.
Yeah.
Like, if I get something new, I feel like I don't know, maybe somebody's gonna come and return it. I don't know if that's like
yeah. I'm like, what if I want
imposter
to sell it?
syndrome thing. But it's weird is those fucking psychological barriers that we kind of just again, we're not all victims and we're all not dying here. It's just being aware of it. So that when we are in situations where it's like you gotta you're going out with friends that or you're gonna get a couple meals in where you can still stay on track and not go into that binge mode.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
that's just again, just being mindful and just being able to communicate with your coach. I think that's the number one tip I give to most people, especially if they're starting a bodybuilding prep or any fat loss prep.
Just in general, just speak to your coach, like especially when it comes to mental health. Like they understand you got to realize that coaches speak to hundreds of thousands of people in their lifetime of working. So like I'm sure they've dealt with whatever you've dealt with before, unless obviously they're a newer coach. But it's just one of those things where communication is probably the most important thing when it does come to your mental health. Like you have to express that you're struggling mentally. If you don't express, I can't fucking read your mind. Like if you can't, like if you don't express that you're struggling mentally, I don't fucking know what's going on behind the scenes. Talk to me.
100%.
You know?
Right.
So
Yeah, that's it. Communication's number one, but you guys are good fucking coaches, man. I'm glad the whole industry is not falling apart. You guys got it.
Slowly is, isn't it?
it's getting there.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
fucking depressing, but again, as long as we stay the course, I think the waves will come. If TikTok gets banned here, some coaches will leave, and if Instagram ever dies, we go to another app, and YouTube will always be there. The thing is just
Yeah.
the consistency with the content.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's important.
All right, we might wrap it up there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a good
thank-
talk. I think we went over an hour again.
Yeah,
Fuck,
I
my
think we did
bad.
an hour and a half. Yeah, that's
My
good.
bad.
Yeah.
That was awesome. We really we went deep, and then maybe we do this again, go
Yeah.
into
Do the
talking
nutrition
to
as well.
Michael after his prep and if he goes on a fat loss phase anytime soon.
Yeah. James is 3 weeks away, so fun times.
Yeah, James is right there, but we got to get Michael back on it. You got to
No,
get
no,
him
no.
back.
I gotta at least a year.
Yeah.
At least a year.
Next year.
Fat loss phase maybe, but a year till the preps.
You
Yeah.
Yeah, just do a mini cut.
Yeah. I did the mini
Add the
cut.
high intensity stuff. Let me know how it
Yeah.
goes.
Oh, well, I can cover that anyway.
By the way, that high intensity one, John Jewett does it for training performance.
There you go.
Training performance. Okay, yeah, that makes sense because
Recovering
Yeah.
between sets.
if you can do 15, 20 seconds super high intensity, then you could translate that over to leg press, hack squats.
Yeah,
Give
That's
more
what he's
reps.
got to give for, like pendulums, all that kind of shit, where he can
Yeah.
recover.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes it's not about bodybuilding. Sometimes just make your fucking heart work, get something challenging, get better at it.
Yeah.
Right,
Easy,
cool.
man.
All right,
Awesome.
thank you.
Thanks for coming on, man.
All right, man. Looking forward to hearing this. We talk a lot. All right. Thank you.